What up, YouTube? Welcome to TMC Fishing. Like always, I appreciate you guys for watching. So today we're gonna go over the spawn, like the title says. I have started to get some good feedback, and I'm really enjoying doing these kind of teaching, classroom style conversations. I want to start calling it Reeltalk, just something that way I can start making a playlist off of it and kind of categorizing all this stuff for you guys. But let me know what you think about this video and other videos like it, or if you have any topics you want me to go over. This one was actually asked by via comment, so it's something I was planning on going over anyway, so I figured I'd knock it out now. But yeah, the spawn. So it's springtime. It's April here in Arizona. The spawn happens at different times throughout, wherever you live in the country. In the South, it happens in March, April, and then the farther up you can go, I think you can go all the way up into May, even June, like New York or something like that. But really all it comes down to is the water temps hit 60 degrees. Okay, 60 degrees seems to be the butter zone for fish to start spawning. Now I have to hold that consistently, but when the bass start pushing up, a lot of things happen kind of at once. So you've got pre-spawn, which is all the fish that are feeding up and getting ready to move up and spawn. You've got the bass that are actively spawning, okay, that are on bed, ready to roll. And then you have post-spawners that have just come off bed, whether that be a fry guarder, a male that's guarding a bunch of babies, or a female who's dumped her eggs and moved off. Okay. You very, very rarely only have spawn. Basically never are you going to have only spawn going on. Okay. In smaller bodies of water, like little farm ponds and stuff like that, most of the fish spawn all together. But in lakes, it's never like that. They move up in waves. Okay. This takes, I would say, anywhere from like 3 to 5 weeks, give or take, of the fish just moving up in waves. And there's a lot of contributing factors to that. Moon phase is a huge deal. They really like to spawn on full moons. And then obviously cold fronts can come through and jack everything up. We can get a cold rain or something like that. High winds that are constantly changing directions can make a big deal. And water clarity makes a big deal on that too. So dirty water warms up quicker and cleaner water warms up slower. So there's a lot of contributing factors that go into it. But once the fish move up, the males are going to create a nest and try and talk a female into going in. Now they have to create their nest on hard bottom or hard structure. Generally, you're going to see it on like gravel-like ground, or like individual big rocks. If you're in like kind of a siltier area, I see it a lot in ponds, like big rocks. They like to spawn right on top, or stumps or something like that. And even tires. I've seen fish spawn on tires. They have to have something to stick those eggs to, where silt or mud or sand doesn't work. And where they pick is a big deal for the fish. So, excuse me. Generally, you're going to find them in the backs of coves or pockets or something like that, because they have to protect those eggs from predators, current, which can be generated via wind or by actual water flow, and predators, obviously. And they have to keep those eggs shallow enough to where they stay warm enough to actually incubate and hatch. So there's a lot that goes into it. And generally, when you find an area on a lake where you see a bed, there's going to be more. Very, very, very rarely are you ever going to find one bed. Generally, you'll come back into a pocket and there'll be multiple. One good spot gets taken over. When it comes to bed fishing, okay, and spawn fishing, okay, there's a mix of opinions and emotions that go into that. I'm not going to touch so much on it, but whether or not you deem it ethical to catch a fish off of a bed is totally up to you. That is your decisions. I feel if you are going to pursue fishing as something you want to gain a lot of knowledge in, or if you want to get to the point where you're competing, which is my eventual goal. Spawn fishing is just a necessary tactic you need to know how to do proficiently. So I don't have a problem bed fishing. Now, the way like weigh-ins and stuff play out, I'm not a fan of that by any means. I don't find it super ethical to be pulling fish off of beds and running them down the lake and weighing them in. I'm not a fan of that at all. I'm really not a fan of keeping fish to eat off of beds. You're kind of schwacking thousands of potential fish in one go whenever you can keep fish all year long. I'm not against keeping fish. I keep fish all the time and I like eating fish. This is just the time of year I really don't like to. But ethics aside, once you actually get to an area and you start fishing spawn, now for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to talk about my tactics, about my mindset going into a day where I know fish are spawning, and kind of how I break down that body of water. And then I'm going to go over the lures and the presentations that I use. Okay. So mainly whenever I hit a body of water and I know the fish should be spawning or should be getting ready to spawn, okay, I'm still going to be primarily trying to focus on pre-spawning bass. And the reason for that is one, they're bigger. The females are full of eggs. And they've been eating all winter. So this is the biggest they're going to be. If you're aiming to catch a big fish or a potential personal best or anything like that, pre-spawn is the best time of year to do so, because they just have that much extra weight on them. And they're a little bit more predictable-ish, whereas a spawning fish doesn't have eating on the brain, right? If they're on bed, their sole purpose is to guard. And depending on how locked in that bass is to that bed, you could spend, they'll eat it on the first cast or the 50th. It's kind of a coin flip and it's super inconsistent. So I'm going to be targeting pre-spawners, especially first light in the morning. I can't really see in the water anyways until the sun gets higher, because bed fishing is a lot more of a visual thing unless you have like really good electronics, which I don't. First light hits, I'm power fishing. I'm covering as much water as I can. I'm hitting coves. I'm hitting pockets. I'm hammering secondary points and the first major structure before I hit where I think the fish are going to be bedded, because that's where the pre-spawners are going to be staged. A lot of times they're going to be kind of concentrated once you do find them, which is awesome because you can sit there and catch quite a few fish. I'll show it in a video, in a clip here in a second, but a lot of times when you find a fish, I'll run a bank line or I'll run a point, and if I catch more than 2 fish off the same structure or point or anything, power fishing, and then they quit biting, I'm going to immediately set that rod down and I'm going to pick up like a Texas rig or a Nico or some kind of bottom contact bait, and I'm going to flip it in there and I'm going to drag it real slow. Because a lot of times what will happen is those pre-spawners, that group of fish will hit the lure a couple times and then they get wise to it and they go, sore lipped or whatever you want to call it. They get a little wise to it. So flipping in, say, a Texas rig or a jig or a drop shot or something to that effect into that crowd will generally get you another 1 to like 3 more bites, which, over the course of the day can add up to a lot. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like once you find fish, slow down for a second and really try and maximize the potential of that school, right? Try and catch as many fish as you can out of that school and then move on. Okay. That's the tricky part, is moving on. Once you've caught, 5 or 6 fish off one point, you kind of want to sit there and keep hammering it. Once they're done, they're done. Okay. Move on. There's lots and lots. There is no point in really slowing down and like hardcore picking apart an area, especially on a lake right now. A pond's a little bit different. If they're not biting, then yeah, we'll step into finesse fishing and slowing down because you don't really have a choice. But if you're in an area where you can cover water. The fish are feeding. They're active, right? The water's warm. They're fired up. You don't have to throw anything super crazy to get them to bite this time of year. So if you're not getting bit, you're probably just not near fish. So that's my main tactic especially in the morning until the sun comes up. I'm power fishing. I'm throwing a crankbait, I'm throwing a spinner bait, I'm throwing a paddle tail. I'm doing whatever I can to cover water. Now, once you hit, say, a body of water that's incredibly pressured, okay, or a pond or anything like that. On the flip side, I'm going to kind of contradict myself on what I just said too, which is kind of funny. But I throw a square bill for most of my search baits. Square bill or a lipless or something to that effect is a really good search bait for me. Chatter baits and spinner baits also fit into that category depending on how much wind or cover I've got. But when I hit a body of water that's super pressured, okay, I'm watching my favorite cove, and I've seen 5 boats come out of that cove before I got a chance to actually get in there. Okay, I know that most likely, springtime baits, most people are throwing relatively the same thing. Not to say that they're not going to work, but most people are throwing a square bill, a chatterbait, a spinner bait, something to that effect, right? Or a wacky rig or a fluke or something like that, okay? Which are all phenomenal baits and they work really well. But those fish have now seen, 5 boats come through throwing the same presentation, especially like on the weekend, man, they can get absolutely hammered by the same presentation over and over and over and over again. Okay, it's springtime. There's going to be way more like spring break and up. All of a sudden you see a massive influx on boats on the water, right? Tournament season's kicking in. And just, your guys who don't like to winter fish, they're coming out now. So throwing something a little different can actually make a big difference. And by different, I just mean something that the fish probably haven't really seen. So primarily, right, I'm throwing a square bill. Okay. Great search bait, bounces off cover, rock, phenomenally. A lot of the bodies of water around here have tons of rock. I live in the desert. We got a lot of rock, not a lot of trees. Okay. Square bill is one of my go-tos. It's caught a lot of fish. It's caught a lot of big fish for me. Okay. But they've probably seen 10 square bills that morning. Okay. Run past them. Probably had a couple fish, watched a couple fish, hit them and go, you know what? I'm probably not going to do that. So something maybe like this. This is the L-shaped bills. Okay. This is the 6-ounce Schwenk, I think is what it's called. There's multiple companies that make these L-shaped bills. It's just a little bit different. It's got some really loud rattles in it. I don't know if you can hear that. It's got a little tighter wobble, and it's super, super buoyant. Okay, so this is its general purpose is to replace a lipless crank and or a chatterbait in grass because it's so buoyant. It runs. As soon as you start to feel grass, you just stop cranking for a second, and it floats up above it. And this bill really helps deflect grass and stuff like that. But I just use it in open water where I would use a square bill pretty often, and it doesn't get hung up. It's really weedless, just like a square bill is, and it's just something different. I bet you very few people throw these this time of year. And so it's just a little bit different noise, a little bit different wobble to it. It's just something different for those fish to see. And I have had a lot of success in doing that and throwing something that's a little bit off. Other options for something like that. This is called the Headbanger. It's got this weird, crazy lip, right? I don't know which company makes this, but I got this out of a mystery tackle box like 2 years ago, and I thought it was super gimmicky, and I wasn't really a big fan of it. And one day I picked it up because I had thrown a lipless and a square bill like all day long, right, at one of the bodies of water that's close to my house here on a little state park. And I couldn't buy a bite, and I was struggling. And so I tied this on because it was just something different. And I was just kind of running through everything in my tackle box, and I caught quite a few fish on it, even though I thought it was super gimmicky because it was just something different. It has a really erratic action going through the water, and the fish just haven't seen it before. And so I challenge you to throw something a little bit different than you would normally do this. And this is whether the bite's hot or not. Okay, even if you're fishing a body of water that's really good and you're not having to worry about pressured fish, this is an awesome time of the year to try new lures and gain confidence with them. Okay. I really push people to not throw the same lure over and over and over again, right? I love throwing a Texas rig. I'm good at it, but and I know I could hit a body of water and throw a Texas rig all day long from dusk till dawn, and I'll catch fish. I know I will, but I want to learn something different. I want to have confidence in something different in case that I hit a day where the Texas rig just ain't it. But to add to changing it up, colors make a big difference too. Okay. I really like throwing a fluke this time of year too. This is just the standard Zoom Super Fluke. Okay. I actually really prefer the Guggen Dart. I ran out of them, so I don't have one. Just because its falling action is really unique, and I tend to get a lot more bites off of it. But this is watermelon red. Okay, this is a staple color. These fish have probably seen 24 of these. You know what I mean? Or a green pumpkin, or a variant of something like that. Right? It's a very natural color, and it works. You know what I mean? Not to take anything away from this color. It's a fantastic color, and it works great. But everybody's throwing it. So throwing, you'll see a lot of pros this time of year will switch up and they'll throw like bubblegum pink, right? Which nothing in nature looks like that. Okay, it's just a bright, really annoying color. But it's something different. Fish just don't see it. Okay, fluorescent orange or something crazy, bright reds. Throwing something different that not everybody else is throwing can really maximize bites this time of year. And just, like I said, if you don't want to step outside of your comfort zone and throw a totally different bait, try throwing a crazy color. You might be surprised. So that's my plan for first thing in the morning, right? I'm going to power fish. I'm going to look for those pre-spawners. I'm going to try and get my big bite out of the way. Okay, now sun's up. I can see. Now I'm going to start keying in a lot more on those bedfish. Okay, I'm going to move back into those coves. I'm going to start looking for bedfish. Now, this is the trickiest thing, in my opinion, about bed fishing. Don't get caught up on a fish you can see. Just because you can see him doesn't mean you can catch him. And to a degree, you can sit there and pester a bedfish long enough, you probably will catch him. But in the time it takes me to pester a fish and flip and pitch, whatever to tick him off enough to bite, whether that's 20, 30, 40 casts, I probably could have moved on down the way and caught another 5 or 6 fish. Okay, don't get locked in on fish. I never give a bedfish more than 10 casts, unless I'm at like a pond or a little tiny body of water and this is the only opportunity I think I'm going to get that day. Then I'll sit there and pester the hell out of them. But on the lake, there's just no point. Maybe if I was tournament fishing and there's like a one big female on bed or something, maybe. But you're burning so much time in your day. What I have found is when fish are fired up, you're going to get them within the first 5 casts. Okay. My go-to is the Texas rig, obviously. This is a good time of year to be throwing like white or like pitch black or something like that, depending on your water colors, just for the visibility aspect. So you can see the fish actually pick up that lure. White's a great thing for, or even like pink is a great color for bed fishing, just because you can see the fish take it. Because a lot of times, I always throw a craw style bait on bed if I can do that, something with flappers, because craws eat eggs, so the fish don't like them. I think this is a rage bug. A lot of times the fish will just grab the claws, and if you only feel that, you'll rip away and you'll lose your claws, or you just won't hook the fish, right? So throwing like a white, I thought I had one. Yeah. So throwing like a white bug, I can see the contrast of if he just gets a hold of those claws versus getting the whole thing in his mouth. Pretty much the only time I'm going to throw a bright color like that other than this time of year. But a lot of people get hung up on just because I can see that fish, I can catch that fish. And what we found, and I'm guilty of it too. I've done the same exact thing. I want to catch that fish really bad because I know it's right there. But if you would just move down the way, like I said, they spawn together. You're very rarely going to find just one bed. So even if I'm blind casting out, you know, a little bit farther down the cove or a little bit farther down that stretch of bank, a lot of times you're going to unintentionally drag across a bed anyways and get a bite from a lot more aggressive fish. So don't get hung up on the fish that you can see. If they're not going to bite, don't worry about it. Move on. There's plenty more fish this time of year. And another thing is if you back off just a little bit, you know, the fish are going to be spawning in 2 to 3 foot of water or one even, you know, super shallow. I found if I cast to the nearest structure from that bed that's in say 5 or 6 feet of water, a lot of times I'll catch a fish that's waiting to move up to a bed, right? A pre-spawner or a buck bass or even a big female that's just moved off and and they're biding their time, maybe waiting for some real estate to open and for some eggs to hatch and fish to move off. A lot of times those fish that are like right there getting ready to spawn, they'll be just off those beds. I mean, 10 feet from them to the right, you know, a little deeper water. So those fish I'm going to be targeting more. That's prime time to be throwing like a wacky rig or a fluke or a Texas rig into something like that. So that's my primary strategy throughout most of the day. And then getting towards evening time, I'm going to transition back over whenever I can't see as well to kind of blind casting and power fishing, and then top water is going to be a huge player. The water temp is as high it's going to be all day in the afternoon, so I'm going to really start pushing shade lines and major structure points. I'm going to start throwing top water, and whether that be a wake bait, a popper, you know, whopper plopper, buzz bait, whatever your personal preference is. I prefer this time of year to throw something slower, like a popper or a wake bait, just because I don't think that the fish are super fired up yet. Not to say the buzz baits don't work or whopper ploppers or anything like that. I just prefer to slow down a little bit. It's just tough to, excuse me. It's just really tough to cover water with a popper. You know what I mean? It's really designed for more like specific targeting spots. So that's why I really lean towards the wake baits. I've been loving the rat lately. You fish it slow, but you still cover enough water that I feel like I'm moving. And you get awesome blow-ups on it. So that's pretty much my go-to throughout the day. I'm going to start power fishing. I'm going to bed fish midday, and then I'm going to go back to power fishing, primarily focusing on top water in the evenings. Okay, that's pretty much my plan during the spawn, all the way up until like May-ish, you know, where I know I'm in post-spawn. And then we're going to start targeting more bluegill beds and shad spawns and stuff like that. And we'll go over that in the future. But that's pretty much my go-to plans. These are the lures that I kind of recommend and I push for. If you guys have any questions about particular, you know, setups that you like to that I like to run, you know, if you have any questions about that, you know, for certain combos or anything like that, just shoot them down in the comments below. Or if you have any other recommendations for videos that you guys want to see in the future, I'd love to see that. But like always, guys, I appreciate you for watching, and I will see you next time.